I think we're going to need to just go ahead and hopefully Commissioner Kai can join us. Unless, Erica, you've received an update.
I haven't. I think he's going to try to call in. That was my last text from him.
Excellent. All right. Well, the meeting has started. We're going to go ahead and call to order the Planning Commission meeting for May 11th, 2021. Roll call. Chair Simpson. Commissioner Widola.
You're on mute.
Sorry about that. Present.
All right. Commissioner Vance.
I am here.
Commissioner Giles.
Here.
Commissioner Harsh.
Present.
Commissioner Brown.
Here.
All right. And when Commissioner Kai is able to get logged in, we'll note it for the record. The first item on our agenda is the consent agenda that consists of the April 27th Planning Commission work session and regular meeting minutes.
I'm hearing Commissioner Kai, I think.
Yeah, my computer finally let me join, so.
All right, we are all present. Welcome, Commissioner Kai. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, so has everybody had an opportunity to review the consent agenda? And do we have a motion to approve?
I'll make a motion.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we approve the consent agenda. Roll call vote again. Chair Simpson, aye. Vice Chair Kai.
Aye.
Commissioner Widola.
Aye.
Commissioner Vance.
Aye.
Commissioner Giles.
Yeah, aye.
Commissioner
Yes.
Harsh.
Aye.
Commissioner Brown.
Aye.
All right, motion approved. Next, council liaison announcement. Councilor Scott.
Hello, good evening. I have not a whole lot. We do have a pretty full agenda for our next council meeting next Tuesday. First of all, we have a work session at 6 p.m. And that work session, council will be an update on some public projects, primarily the Willamette Water Supply Project, as well as the Tualatin Shore Road and Roy Rogers Road widening projects, which are kicking off. So anyone interested in either of those two topics will want to tune into our 6 p.m. work session to hear those updates and that discussion. In our new business next week in our public hearing starting at 7 p.m., we'll have a number of public hearings. We have our second reading for our second reading for the Parks and Rec Master Plan update. So we had our first reading last time, and we'll have our second reading next Tuesday, and then we'll have our first reading for two additional ordinances. The first one being the adoption of the new urban renewal plan, and the second one being some building code updates that are required due to state laws. So we have to update building codes around plumbing, residential, and fire codes. It's kind of a housekeeping thing that happens every year or so. And that's it for me.
All right, thank you, Councilor Scott. Moving on to staff announcements, and under our consent agenda and agenda for this evening, we have an item 6B that is going to be removed, and it is listed under staff announcements. So
Great.
Yeah.
So I'm just going to start off here with a couple of announcements, and then I'm going to have Joy Chang, Senior Planner, lead in to the announcement for our residential design standards. The first announcement has to do with our comprehensive plan. I sent out the schedule to planning commissioners for the summer last week. As you can tell, we are going to be working on the comp plan in the months of June and July. Lots of work sessions. To review that plan and to, make any edits. That plan will be going to then City Council in August and September, and we will be starting the hearings process to adopt that plan in the fall. So that's kind of our schedule as we go along with the comp plan. We expect to have a first draft of the comprehensive plan to commissioners by the first week of June. The second update has to do with our Sherwood West Relook project. That project is kicking off this week with our first Community Advisory Committee meeting and our Technical Advisory Committee meeting this Thursday. The Technical Advisory Committee meeting is from 2 to 4 p.m. And the Community Advisory Committee meeting is from 5 to 7 p.m. And if you're interested in watching those meetings, they will be recorded and they will be streamed online on the city's YouTube channel. Packets went out to everyone last week, and they are also posted online. We've been updating the website, and more updates to the website are coming tomorrow about that project. And just to let you know, we are also sending out a mailer to all property owners in the Sherwood West area by the end of this week about that project and where they can find information. So with that, I'm going to hand this off to Joy, and she can give us an update about the residential design standards.
Excellent. Thank you, Erica. Let me share my screen with you guys. Whoa. Are you seeing my PowerPoint?
Yes.
Yes.
Oh, excellent. So let me just start it here. Okay, great. And of course, I can't see anybody. So if we can definitely answer questions. I only have 4 slides. So good evening, everyone. Joy Chang, Senior Planner with the Planning Department, and just an update in regards to the residential design standards and the House Bill 2001 work that we're continuing on. As you're aware, we did have a virtual open house that was open for 2 weeks from April 23rd through May 7th. There were over 472 views, which is excellent in my point of view. And that was as of midday of May 6th. And again, it closed on May 7th. We received a total of 44 responses tied to the open house questions. Many of the responses generally dealt with affordability of housing in Sherwood, definitely housing options. We had some likes and lots of dislike in regards to those housing options. There were also design elements that were identified, ADA compliance and accessibility, housing variety, windows, landscaping, and front door standards were all commented on. And we did receive one comment regarding parking where it was needed for new development. So next steps tied to the Planning Commission. Staff is gonna receive draft code amendments by the end of this week. We plan on turning those around to you guys color coded by early next week. So hopefully we can get it to you by Monday. And the goal, in addition to all the work that Erica was identifying tied to the comp plan, we will also be busy with reviewing those draft code amendments. So I'm projected that you'll be hearing about it, and we'll be discussing those code amendments on May 25th, June 8th, and June 22nd. We are also planning, let's just hope that this can happen, in-person open house. We're projecting Thursday evening, July 15th. It's going to be very similar to how the library is accepting individuals in, but with appointments. So we're hoping that we can allocate like an hour time for everyone that wants to actually join us. And in addition to that, the following Saturday, July 17th, is the Robin Hood Festival. At this time, it's my understanding that they are going to make a decision if that actually does happen. This coming Saturday, the 15th. If it doesn't get postponed, we will do additional outreach at that event. If it does get postponed, which it won't be until September, the end of September, we will most likely do the same, or we will plan out the same thing, but Saturday morning, as far as individuals can sign up for appointments. So the following slide, I generated this for all of you. Basically, this is a timeline from once we actually have a code ready amendments. And so it starts from July 1st through June 30th of next year, 2022, where it has to be acknowledged, that our whole project has to be acknowledged by DLCD. Like I indicated to you, the in-person open house, we will have them July 15th and July 17th. And I did break this down into two separate tracks as requested as directed by the Planning Commission. We are our goal is to have the residential design elements be adopted by the end of November. And then the housing choices will start the first of the new year and hope to get them adopted in April. That is all that I have in regards to updates at this time. So I can answer any questions while I have this timeline up, if you have any.
Councillor Scott has his hand raised. Go ahead.
So a couple of requests and questions, I guess. So the first one being, can you send out the detailed feedback we received from the open house survey? Second.
Yes,
Sorry.
for sure. I just got raw data, and so I wanted to be able to present something to you tonight. But we do expect a summary this week also, so that will go out to you, and we will also post it on the webpage so that people have an understanding of what came out of that.
Yeah, I would like to see the raw data and the summary. So you could send them all together, but I'd like to see both.
All right. Noted.
Secondly, I guess as a question, is there a reason we have to wait to January to start the housing choices track? I'm just concerned about, not leaving ourselves enough time. Is there any reason we can't start sooner on that?
Well, if you look at this graphic, it shows that the Planning Commission hearing, the second one, if needed, is September 14th. And we actually took a break in October just because with staff's additional work tied to the EOA and the comp plan, it pushed this project even further. We were hoping that we could have started it sooner, but we just did a charrette in regards to everything that was going to be happening in the next several months. And the Planning Commission and City Council schedule is packed. So we could definitely discuss it in regards to trying to start it sooner, but I'm just not sure if it will fit anytime sooner. But we'll reevaluate your request and see if we can do that.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. It seems like maybe we could, after Planning Commission kicks it to council and they start their hearings, I know you guys will be busy, but maybe that's when we can start doing our work sessions for the housing choices. Thank you. Commissioner Widola?
Thank you. Just a quick question on the acknowledgement by DLCD. What is DLCD?
Department of Land Conservation and Development.
Thank you.
You're very welcome. So they kind of oversee the state land use system, and they review, code amendments that cities, adopt to make sure that they're meeting state land use laws and our state land use goals.
And in this case, does it go through Metro also?
So in this case, Metro will just be notified, sorry, Joy, through the public hearing process. And they can comment during the hearings process, of course, but it doesn't go to them directly for them to make a decision.
Okay.
In this work that we are currently doing, we received a grant from DLCD for the code update and the amendments. And so we've been briefing them as the work has been progressing, just to make sure we're in compliant with that grant.
Okay, excellent. Do we have any other questions for staff on the residential design standards? And then our second half, the House Bill 2001 implementation for housing choices. Eric and Joy, thank you very much. That was a nice update, and looks like we're I see the finish line. It's out there. It's coming. So
You guys are going to be busy.
Yeah, the first few lights might be the trains coming at us. So all right, last item on the staff announcement is the next Planning Commission meeting. Is that Erica?
Oh, sorry. Yes. So the next commission meeting is May 25th, and it'll be a work session on our draft residential design standards. And as Joy mentioned, we will be providing everyone a memo that summarizes the feedback that we received at the online virtual open house.
And what time is that?
6:15.
Okay. Is everybody okay with 6:15? All right.
Yeah, that works.
No problem.
Yeah.
All right. I'm putting it in my phone or you won't have me at 6:15. Okay. No other staff announcements? All right. Then we're going to move on to community comments. Community comments are limited to those items not already on the agenda. Pursuant to House Bill 4212, citizen comments and testimony for public hearings must be submitted in writing to the city recorder or the planning department 24 hours in advance of the scheduled meeting time to be included in the agenda for the evening. Erica, did we receive any community comments for this evening's meeting?
We did not.
All right, then we will move on to new business. And as stated before, we have one item left on the new business, which is our public hearing. Item B has been taken from our agenda off. All right, so I have a public hearing script to read for this hearing. The public hearing on LU 2020-013 PUD Denali Summit Final Plat and Final Development Plan is called to order. To maintain compliance with public meeting laws and pursuant to House Bill 4212, this meeting is being conducted electronically. The public notices for this meeting stated that citizen comments and testimony for this public hearing item had to be submitted in writing at least 24 hours in advance in order to be included in the record. The public hearing this evening will be conducted as follows. Staff will present the staff report, questions, if any, by the hearing body for staff. We will then open the public hearing for testimony, and time will be limited as follows. The applicant will have 30 minutes split between presentation and rebuttal. As previously noted, public testimony for this hearing was required to be submitted in writing in advance. Staff will read the first 4 minutes of comments received. The full text of any comments received has been provided to the hearing's body and the applicant in advance of this hearing and will be included in the record. There will be a rebuttal from the applicant, which is the remainder of the 30 minutes. There'll be final comments by staff, questions of staff, if any, by the commission. We will then close the public hearing and no other comments will be heard from the public or the applicant. Then discussion by the commission. The Planning Commission is the final hearing authority on this item this evening with appeal to the City Council. A decision may be made by the Planning Commission at the close of the hearing, or the matter may be continued to a time and date certain. If the matter is continued to a date certain, this will be the only notice of that date you receive. In reaching a decision on the application, the Commission must consider whether the application meets the relevant approval criteria in the city's land use regulations. Those criteria are identified in the staff report, which was included in the materials for the meeting posted on the city's website. Please note, failure to raise an issue with enough detail to enable the Commission, the applicant, and the parties an opportunity to respond to the issues precludes an appeal to the City Council or Land Use Board of Appeals on that issue. Also, failure by the applicant to raise constitutional or other issues regarding proposed conditions of approval, again with enough detail to allow the Commission to respond to the issue, precludes an action for damages in circuit court. At this time, I will take a roll call to ask members of the Commission to disclose any ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest. Please state the nature and indicate, please state none, or indicate the nature and extent of the ex parte contact, bias, or conflict of interest, and indicate whether you intend to participate in or abstain from the hearing. Chair Simpson, none. Vice Chair Kai?
None.
Commissioner Wydola?
None.
Commissioner Bantz?
None.
Commissioner Giles?
None.
Commissioner Harsh?
None.
Commissioner Brown?
I need to recuse myself from any decisions on this matter just because I represent clients who are interested in this development and also want to get more information, and I've shared information on that.
All right, so Commissioner Brown will be recusing herself. This is our first virtual commissioner recusing themselves. I'm presuming she can stay on the line, but must remain muted during this part of the hearing. Is that correct?
That is correct.
All right. Thank you very much. At this time, I would like to ask if the applicant wishes to challenge any Planning Commission members' ability to participate this evening. And I'll need a...
No.
Okay, very good. So the planning staff will now present the staff report. And Eric, I believe that is you.
Yes, good evening, Chair Simpson and Planning Commissioners. 1 second here as I share my screen. All right, so Eric Rutledge, Associate Planner at the City of Sherwood. Happy to be giving the staff presentation for LU 2020-01.
Alexandra Brown
is now exiting.
013 Denali Summit, final plat and final development plan. The applicant is requesting final plat and final development plan approval for a new 41-lot residential subdivision and planned unit development in the very low density residential zone. The final plat and final development plan applications are being processed concurrently as a type 4 land use action pursuant to the Sherwood Development Code. Here's an overview of the application timeline and process. Find my cursor laser pointer here. So hopefully you recall the Planning Commission first heard the application in November 2020, recommended approval with conditions to the City Council. City Council held 2 public hearings on the application, December 2020 and January 2021. Ultimately, they approved the application with conditions. They did place a number of conditions of approval on the application, intended to get the application up to meeting the PUD approval criteria. And so those kind of be summarized in different categories: street design conditions, pedestrian corridor design conditions, and then open space design conditions. So all of these are required to be met prior to final development plan approval. So that's part of what you are reviewing and signing off on tonight. I'll go over those in a little bit more detail in just a bit. And so tonight, of course, we're here May 11th as part of the final development plan and final plat approval. Once the final plat and development plan are approved, the applicant can also obtain permits from the engineering department for the public improvements as part of the subdivision, and then building permits would follow that. Notice of the application was routed to affected agencies on April 12th, 2021, and agency comments have been incorporated into the findings and exhibits of the staff report. Public notice of the application was provided in accordance with section 16.72 of the Development Code, including mailed notice to property owners within 1,000 feet of the site. As of this afternoon, no written public comments were received on the application. The applicable chapters of the Development Code are shown on this slide for reference. You may have noticed, if you read the staff report in detail, there were a number of conditions of approval and approval criteria under 16.120 subdivisions. The staff finding would have said something like, this criteria condition has not yet been satisfied, but will be satisfied prior to city sign-off on the Mylars. And I just wanted to pause and just clarify that, because I think it's maybe a little bit confusing that you're signing off on something when the findings say that it'll be satisfied in the future. So normally, if an applicant did a subdivision application, got that approved, whether it's a type 3 or type 4, the final plat would come back as a type 1 staff decision. And so the planning commission or hearings officer, whoever reviewed it, wouldn't actually sign off on the final plat. It would just be done by staff. But because this is a planned unit development, that final development plan needs to come back to Planning Commission. We also include this type 1 final plat. In the past, we've actually done it different ways. Sometimes it does come to Planning Commission, sometimes it doesn't. Most recently, we have been bringing it forward. And so just want to clarify that this process, it does require a lot, the type 1, even if we're just at the staff level, it requires a lot of back and forth between the applicant, the city, and the county. And so the county surveyor, who's actually recording the final plat. And so oftentimes we will approve the final plat and then, actually issue the notice of decision, and then sort of work with the applicant and the county to really fine tune things before it gets recorded and the city actually signs off on the Mylars. And so this is something that staff does as a type 1, but just wanted to clarify that in case there were any concern about some of the findings saying that the condition will be met in the future. It's sort of a standard process, but it's just coming to Planning Commission with the follow-up being with staff instead of the initial review by staff and then the follow-up with staff. So hopefully that's clear, and we can certainly go back to that if anything isn't clear. But here's, just for reference, the final plat approval criteria. The final development plan approval criteria is something that you should be looking at, paying attention to in detail, and making sure that those conditions are satisfied. This is the type 4 application. And just to clarify, the staff findings do indicate that all of these criteria and conditions have been satisfied, but I can certainly go back and answer any questions if there's any questions on the specific criteria or conditions. And this is just kind of an example of some of the conditions that were placed on the application by City Council after the Planning Commission review. So again, related to public street design, pedestrian corridor design. There's a lot of detail in here, so I won't go over it in detail, but we can certainly go back to it if we need to. And then just really wanted to clarify the process and conditions that I was speaking about earlier. And so these are just to provide a summary of the criteria and also the conditions that have not yet been satisfied, but that staff will verify prior to signature of the Mylars. It's the approval criteria for the final plat 2, 4, 5, and 7. Conditions of approval B1, 4, 8, and 16. And then through some Planning Commission comments and also an additional staff review, there's just some other cleanup, I guess, that would be required prior to signature of the Mylars. So staff is okay with sort of signing off on all of these after the approval tonight. I think if Planning Commission is not comfortable moving forward, you can certainly require these as conditions of approval of the final development plan and final plat, and just give it a little bit more teeth, I guess. But staff is okay with just signing off on these without a new condition of approval. All right. Getting into the site details, development site is here, approximately 15-acre site east of Murdoch Road and north of Ironwood Lane in the city of Sherwood. This is, again, the site outlined here in red. There is other activity taking place right now. This Denali Meadows subdivision and PUD was approved last year by the council and the Planning Commission. And if you drive on Murdoch Road today, you'll see this Denali Meadows subdivision under construction. A lot of activity in terms of the public improvements underway now. Denali Lane, here to the south, the public improvements have been completed here, and I think all of the homes have actually been constructed, and some of them have occupancy. So that subdivision and PUD is moving along as well. And this site to the north is an underdeveloped site. We anticipate at some point getting an application for a subdivision, if not a subdivision and PUD in the future. So an overview of the final plat. It's a total of 41 single-family lots, including the 2 lots for the existing homes. The final plat lot sizes range from 10,000 square feet to 20,886 square feet, 1.4 acres of open space in tracks A, track C, and track G, and the use of both public and private streets in order to provide access to the homes. This darker road here is the public road, and these smaller, lighter colored streets are the private streets. In terms of some of the changes that were required by the City Council and the conditions of approval, they did have concerns about speeding and sight distance along both of these curves of the public street. And so they required the use of chokers or bulb outs prior to entering the curve of each street. So you can see those bulb outs or chokers outlined here in red. They also required a sight vision easement for the corners, 20-mile-per-hour speed limit as you approach, and then no parking on each side of the curves. And so this is a condition that staff has found to be met. City Council also required changes to the pedestrian improvements provided by the PUD. The condition requires the pedestrian corridors that provide access to each of the open space areas to be a minimum of 15 feet wide and also meet the pedestrian walkway cross-section. And so that would be the entrances to track C, 2 entrances here, 1 to track A. and then also this connection between the private streets, tract E and F. And so the design you can see here, minimum of 15 feet wide, 5 foot paved with 5 feet of landscaping on each side. The council was also concerned about the pedestrian connectivity between the two public streets via these private streets. And so they also required a 5 foot wide sidewalk on the north side of tract F, a connection between the two, and then on the south side of tract E, you can see a detail here of the sidewalk along the north side, connecting the two, and then continuing on the south side of the private street of tract E. And then, of course, this pedestrian walkway design between the two with pedestrian lighting. Open space design. As you may recall, Planning Commission placed a condition of approval that a detailed open space plan be provided as part of the final development plan. The applicant has provided that. That's the plan that you're seeing on the slide here. City Council also placed a more specific condition of approval on the application and required 2 different types of amenities within the open space. And so the applicant is proposing to meet those by providing a new native plant garden in tract A here, and then also 2 interpretive signs in tract C here. And get to the detail, a little bit more detail here on some of these slides. You can see the benches are proposed, and then the landscaping. So this would be tract A, where the native plant garden is. You can see the use of native plants, and then some plant identification signs that will be visible as you walk through the area. And here is tract C. This is heading in this direction is to the east towards Mount Hood. So the view of Mount Hood would be in this direction. So again, a detailed open space plan with a walkway throughout, some benches here. And then in order to meet that condition of approval, 2 different interpretive signs at different locations here and here. So the first one would be related to the human history of the area, and the second would be related to the geology of the area. The applicant did provide a draft of the write-up for these interpretive signs, not final yet, but a draft was included in the packet. So that concludes, that kind of goes over sort of the key changes and conditions of approval from City Council and how they've been satisfied by the application. Just wanted to clarify that, again, no public comments received on the application. The staff recommendation for this evening, based on review of the applicant's information, review of the code, agency and public testimony, staff recommends approval of the final plat and final development plan with the understanding that some of the final plat and final plat criteria and conditions have not yet been satisfied, but those will be signed off on by staff as a type 1 review after tonight. And I do just want to clarify that the staff recommendation is just a recommendation. If you have any questions on any of this, if it's not clear, or if you have alternative findings, this is definitely your decision. And so the Planning Commission alternatives for tonight approve the final plat and development plan application based on the findings in the staff report. You can approve the final plat and final development plan based on the findings in the staff report as modified by the commission, or not to approve one or both of the final plat and development plan applications based on the findings in the staff report as modified by the commission. And happy to take any questions if you have them.
Would you go back to the slide that has the changes that staff found through the review?
Yeah, let me just pass it.
Yep, I saw it.
There we go.
Okay. I had raised a couple of questions about the CC&Rs, and I just want to make sure, I guess my concern is in the staff report on packet page 20, item 10. It says that all proposed open space tracts available for use by the general public. It says open space tracts A, C, and G, but I would think it would be appropriate to also include the public, add language in there that is inclusive of the public path on tracks E and F, because that's part of the public. I didn't know if that's what you're proposing to change in this, or you're just proposing to change the CC&Rs that are in this applicant's submittal. Are they going to modify their?
Yeah, so, I'll just go back to, let's see, just to clarify what we're talking about here. We can go back to this one. So be this area here. So in the CC&Rs, tract E and tract F, I think those are pretty clearly identified as private streets with those maintenance responsibilities. I think you're correct that this sidewalk on the north side of tract F, the south side of tract E, and then the connection between the two is not addressed in the CC&Rs. It is addressed on the plat itself, the final plat, and so oftentimes there will be notes on the plat that clarify the use. It usually doesn't include enough detail in terms of maintenance of these areas, but the plat, as it stands now, does have I believe it says PPE, public pedestrian easement. So that would cover the 5 feet, 15 feet, and 5 feet, but it's not covered in the CC&Rs. So the one is bullet point, going back to this slide here, the one bullet point would be to revise the CC&Rs to address ownership and maintenance responsibilities for the 5-foot sidewalk along tracks E and F, and the pedestrian easement and improvements between the two. So I don't know if, does that get address the concern?
It addresses it in the CC&Rs when they get edited and returned. So they would be revised, and would that be part of the type 1 staff level review to confirm that that's in the CC&Rs? And then I was thinking in the staff report, it should be reflected in item 10 and a finding added that that's part of the open space.
Yeah, so we wouldn't modify the staff report at this point if they haven't met it. So I think it would be a type 1, and yeah, staff would just review that after, when it's actually met. But I don't know that we would write new findings, for it. It would just be sort of signed off on as part of that checklist prior to signature of the Mylars.
Okay, and while we're doing the CC&Rs, I had one other comment just for clarity, because we all know what's going on right now, and currently the homeowners association as it is would be run by the developer until the time that it's turned over to the individual unit owners. I think it would be appropriate to ask that the CC&Rs include language someplace in them that the public open spaces were part of a land use decision, and it's probably obvious to those of you that are in the business that this is part of that. But having been involved with homeowners associations, sometimes you don't have that institutional knowledge to understand, and so that changes can't be made. And there's in one of the declaration on page 8 of one of the CC&Rs says there's alterations to the common area in 5.3 that says only the association or governmental agency have jurisdiction. Is it appropriate to ask them to update it, including the language that it's part of a land use decision, and include similar language in the supplemental declaration? I think we spoke that there's two different CCNRs because there's two different developers, and it seems like they should. Is that appropriate to ask for clarity?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, yes, I agree with you that, these land use decisions and the conditions of approval aren't really, aren't the first things that HOAs grab when they're looking, they're going to grab the CCNRs first, of course. And so, just to clarify, the conditions of approval would still stand. And so the only way that they could really modify or get out of the conditions is if they came back for a modification. So, even if they modified things that were outside of the conditions, we would still be able to enforce that. So just want to clarify that. But I do think in order to avoid that and sort of a big headache on everyone's part, including the HOA, future HOA, I think I think that's appropriate to request that the land use decision and the conditions of approval be very sort of clearly indicated in the CCNRs. So yes, and I believe the applicant is open to that, but I'll let them, speak for themselves.
Okay, before they come up to talk, I want to just ask if it was appropriate and if I was going down the right path. Commissioner Waidola, you have a question of staff before the applicant testifies?
Well, let me just add on, because it might be just some issue of me not knowing, but it's right along the same lines as where you're going, Chair Simpson, and that is on Article 5 on both of them when it comes to the use of common areas. One of them doesn't mention Tract C, and the other one specifically excludes Tract C from public access. And so I was just curious on that.
I'm just going to close my screen here. I'm going to pull up the packet here so we can see what you're referring to. So just to clarify, and I don't know if this is going to get to the question, but yeah, there are two different developers and therefore two different CCNRs. And so it could be just a matter of, really how it should work is the HOA that, one HOA is responsible for Tract C. The other HOA is going to be responsible for Tract A, Tract G. Is how it's split per the ownership right now. So that may answer it, but without looking at the details, it's a little bit difficult.
Well, that would narrow it in, and I can give you a little bit more specific. So on packet page 99, Article 5, this is the second CCNRs that were included with our packet. So in Article 5 and 5.1, see here, almost the second or third to last sentence says, there shall be no access to Tract C except for maintenance purposes by persons designated by the association or by governmental entities having jurisdiction. And so I was just curious that, with Tract C having a lot of comments and conversation around it, is this CCNR stating that is only for use of the residents of the PUD?
Gotcha. Okay, I'm with you now. So I believe what's happening is, so if I go back to this other slide with all of the different subdivisions and PUDs that have been approved recently. So the one in question now, of course, is Denali Summit. This developer is JT Roth, a local developer here in the area. He started in this area with the Denali Lane subdivision and PUD, which is this one down to the south. And so the approach that the developer's taking to the CCNRs is to have this Denali Lane CCNR sort of be the anchor in terms of the really sort of common requirements. And then he's doing an addendum to that to add Denali Meadows, which they've done, and then this site as well. And so on that page 99, that's part of the original Denali Lane. And so I believe there's going to be a Tract C in Denali Lane that's referring to. But there's an addendum that will address the open space areas here for Denali Summit. So I think we're okay there. If that makes sense.
No, that makes sense.
But that's a good catch, and it's we throw a whole bunch of documents at you, and it's not really clear, not always clear, what they're referring to. So yeah.
So while we're looking at that, Commissioner Giles, is yours on the common area and the CCNRs, or is it a different topic?
I have two comments. One is, and so I'll just make that one, but is there any reason we have to keep the numbering or the lettering identification standard through both developers, or can we just start the second developers as starting at plot D, E, and F? You know what I mean? Like, do we have to, so there's not two plot Cs?
I think that would be, I think that's certainly an option. If, yeah, you know, that's something that could be addressed. So that's yeah, you know, part of this conversation of there's a lot of back and forth, you know, even after the final plat is technically approved. So that's something that we could work with prior to signing off on the final plat. It's just to clean up all of the Denali open spaces. The only thing I'll mention, I believe that Denali Meadows plat, that's the public improvements are under construction now. I'm not clear exactly where that's at. If this has already been, you know, recorded with the county and it hasn't, then we kind of lost that opportunity, I guess, because the Denali Meadows is already the first addendum to Denali Lane, and Denali Summit is going to be the second addendum. So I guess I'd want to check in with the applicant first, see where this Denali Meadows plat is at. But if it hasn't been recorded, it's not too much effort. I think that's a possibility.
That would be great. Is your other comment on the CCNRs, Commissioner Giles?
No, it was on the choke points on the roads.
So can we, let me make one more question before we do that. Back to the annex, the supplemental CCNR question then. It says in C, tracks B, D, and E are not common areas. And it looks like from that E, well, I don't know which one it is, that the pedestrian path, that's the common area that connects the two private streets, crosses that dividing line in the middle. So is that two different developers and they're each going to be doing it? And we need to ensure that that language is clear in the CCNRs. That am I wrong? Is the connector between the private drives, that's common area, correct?
Yes, that's going to be, this area here is going to be in a public pedestrian easement. And the line for, so the separation between the two developments is going to follow the existing property lines. So Miller currently owns this property here. You can see the line about right here. They own this property now and will be developing it. JT Roth Development will be purchasing this property and developing it. And you see the line kind of splits, it splits that middle area there. So tract E, I believe if I zoom in here, sorry, tract F is going to be with Miller. Tract E will be with JT Roth. And yes, this will be split. Because this is in an easement, this entire area is in an easement. It's not, you know, it's not technically a tract. And so we did have this condition, zoom back out here, that they address the ownership. It really should just clarify that it's an easement and then the maintenance responsibility for both the 5-foot sidewalk and the connection between the two. And so both developers will have to address that because one of them has tract E, one of them has tract F, and both of them have the part in between.
And that will be part of the type 2 review that staff will do as part of the final cleanup before it's signed off to the county.
Correct. Yeah. I mean, this is, I think, is a pretty good list. Yes. Right here. Yep.
Excellent. Thank you very much. So Commissioner Giles, your question on the,
yeah, if we could just go to the road alterations.
Yeah.
So am I right in saying that it kind of gets it down to only one lane and you kind of drive into the middle of the road to get through that? I'm not sure exactly what's happening there.
That's a very good question. We do have Craig Christensen on the line. He's one of our engineers at the city. Craig, if you're still on, do you mind speaking to that question?
Yeah, I'm still here. No, it won't be one lane. There'll still have to be 2 lanes of traffic, but our typical street section is 28 feet in width, which allows parking on one side. So what the choker rule will do is it will get rid of some of that excess distance there and give the appearance of being choked down while still allowing for 2 lanes of travel through it. I believe that those are going to be set to 20 feet between the curbs. I'd have to look it up to double check that, but that would be what you would want for an emergency vehicle to get through.
Thank you.
Okay, so that has a natural result of slowing traffic and also not having cars parked there, which would hide the visibility and stuff like that. Am I understanding that right?
Yeah, basically, the narrowing is, in theory, is supposed to present something that's going to cause the drivers to slow up.
Okay.
So that giving that narrow appearance. So there will be limited parking around this, especially with these curves that are going through here, because we can't have cars parked around these sharper curves. So a lot of those areas will not have any parking at all when it comes to being around those curves.
All right, that was my question. Thank you.
Excellent. Commissioner Bantz, a question for staff before the applicant testifies.
Yeah, it actually, that was a really interesting question, Commissioner Giles. And so I ended up watching all the city council meetings on this. They're long meetings, but that particular issue was addressed, and I thought it was really interesting to hear the psychological component of those things. He likened it to like pulling up to a curb along a road, and just when you think you're close enough, you get out and find you're about 2 feet away. There's a psychological component. I'm too close, and so even though the way he described it is even though these encroach into the street, they actually don't narrow the normal lane. It's just your brain thinks that it is, and so it causes you to slow down. I thought that was intriguing. And so it's a way of slowing this down. So anyway, that's not my question. It's just a comment because you got me thinking about that. My question was actually back to those CC&Rs, and we just need to follow the train of burden of upkeep and all that. So I know that ownership is kind of being addressed in a couple spots there, but CC&Rs, I believe, are going to get recorded against the whole thing, and so they'll be the responsibility of the developer so long as until all the lots are sold. And this is the part I need to understand a little bit more. So at what point, does the developer fully back out? I expect that nobody is buying the private streets. So maybe is it once all the lots are sold that those private streets get turned over to an HOA, and then these CC&R restrictions move over to, or the requirements move over to the HOA to handle in perpetuity? Or how do we make sure those CC&R the upkeep of those areas get maintained even after the developer's long gone?
Yeah, that's a great question, and I don't have my knowledge base doesn't allow me to give you a really quick answer. I know in reviewing these, I did read some language, and so I'd say the developer is probably best to respond to that. But I believe I've seen some language in here. Looking at the CC&Rs now on another screen, that addresses that says, this developer is developing it, and so, here's the responsibilities until a certain point. So I believe it is addressed in the CC&Rs without, going into detail in these right now. So I guess I'd say it'd be great to have the developer respond to that question. If we're still not satisfied, we can look at the CC&Rs in a little bit more detail.
Okay. Yeah, and we'll ask when we get there then, because I think CC&Rs expire typically and they need to be carried over somewhere. Maybe they don't, I don't know. We'll follow up on that then. My last question before we get into it is, when I did watch the council's discussion, there was it seemed like there were more conditions than this, than what you just presented. But I think the other ones, and this is what I'm hoping you can clarify, the other ones were basically done deals that we didn't need to look at again. Like I think one of them had to do with lots 11 and 12 setbacks or something there, and there was something approved. But is it that those items didn't need to be represented by you because those were clear enough that they're just basically done, and so what's coming back to us are the conditions? Hey, go fix this, and then present what's being fixed to the Planning Commission. Is that is that correct?
Yeah, so there's two applications that you're reviewing tonight prior to you're reviewing final plat and also final development plan. The final development plan, I think, is really the big one, and the conditions that are sort of under that application are really, what Planning Commission should be signing off on. So those are the ones that I tried to highlight. The ones that I tried to highlight are the ones that were, a little bit more contentious, or that I guess required the biggest lift in order to get to approval at City Council. And so I think they require, just the most attention in order to make sure that they're, addressed through the final development plan. And so, yeah, the other ones, I don't want to say they're less important, but, I think they're a little bit more straightforward. But all of the conditions prior to final development plan should be satisfied, now prior to this hearing, and the staff report indicates, yes, those have been satisfied. The type 1 final plat application, that does have just a lot of, I guess, sort of nuances to it in terms of subdivision platting and legal descriptions and easements, and a lot of that is kind of fluid as the county reviews it and as the city reviews it, and so there's just a lot of back and forth, and so not all of those have been satisfied, but would certainly be satisfied prior to the final city sign off and recording of the plat. Yeah, did that answer the question?
Can I add a little bit more clarity? If we go into the packet, I think I'm not sure, I don't have the electronic packet up in front of me, but the original document that we recommended to approval and then the city council then voted on, there are sections within those conditions of approval that said there's general conditions of approval, prior to final subdivision, prior to issuance of an engineering permit, prior to a grading permit, prior to all these other things. And prior to the final subdivision, there were 19 or 21 things that had to be done. And I think the question on lots 11 and 12, I don't know if that's in this section of final subdivision, but that's a decision the council already made, and that will be determined by staff during the type 1 division about did the building meet the setbacks. So it's not subjective. That makes sense.
That's kind of how I interpret it as well.
I think it's in a different. It must be in a different section that says that. Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, I'm just reading I'm in the staff report now, packet page 18, and it is the general conditions. So number is A18. This one's related to trees. There's a few different ones related to 11 and 12, but all
the rear setbacks.
Yeah.
Number 17 is rear setbacks.
Is that B17?
It's A17. So
it was not included. I see. Yeah. So, if it wasn't, I guess, appropriate for Planning Commission to sign off on that one as part of either the final plat or final development plan, and it was really either, some of these conditions, like Chair Simpson mentioned, are actually signed off on by our building permit technicians as they review the actual detailed building permit, plans for each individual home. And so that one would be satisfied at that time.
Yeah, general conditions also encompass a lot of like fences shall be, all fences meet this thing, or decks will do this, or new utilities shall be placed underground. So some of those things we don't necessarily have under our purview. And the next time we all look at conditions of approval for the next application that comes through, we'll be able to see the little section that says final subdivision. And that's, I think, where we were focusing this hearing on, is to make sure that all those big ticket items got done, right?
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. And then my last is on, you mentioned the interpretive signage, that condition. If I recall correctly, council basically gave the developer like several options There's like a whole list of things they could choose from. And so I guess I just want to confirm like that those were kind of worked through, and these are the two that they picked out of that list.
Yeah,
And that is appropriate according to your review, that they picked two valid ones, and that's fine in accordance with the council's conditional approval.
Yeah, I don't, unfortunately didn't include the open space design changes on this slide. But yeah, the way that that condition worked was it was a condition related to one of the PUD approval criteria, I think related to public benefit. And so in order to meet that condition or meet that criteria, a condition of approval was placed that two different types of amenities be provided in the open space. And so they kind of allowed a menu of options, interpretive signage, play structure, a lot of different options. And so let the developer kind of choose what was most appropriate for the space and for the development. So yeah, they provided those two in order to meet that condition.
Okay.
Thank you. That's like A19 from the city's conditions of approval, or B19, sorry. Is that, just throwing it back to the CC&Rs, this is a menu that because one of my other questions was going to be like the sign. I'm glad you said that was kind of a draft of the language that they were going to be using, because it seems like as things change, they may want to change the signs themselves. Not just the wording on the sign, but what if the nature of tract A changes and they want to put a park a play structure in there? We can, they have this menu of things to choose from. I think that would be it would be a benefit to have in the CC&Rs to say, you're not limited to those two items. There was a menu of choices, and the ones that were selected are here. So I'll throw that to the applicant. Commissioner Giles, you have a question? Or not? Okay.
Nope, sorry.
That's okay. That's okay. I do that myself. So are there any more questions of staff regarding the staff report, or questions about the application and what our process and obligation is this evening before we have the applicant testify? All right, then we will usually I have blue cards so I can try and mispronounce someone's name, but we have the applicant here this evening. If you could just start with your name and address for the record, that would be great.
Good evening, everyone. Steve Miller, Emerio Design, 6445 Southwest Fallbrook Place, Suite 100, Beaverton, Oregon, 97008. I think you guys covered everything already. Aren't we done? I'm here to answer any questions you have tonight. I think I'll just clarify a couple things for you on the lettering of those tracks. The county surveyor won't allow that to change, because this whole area was not taken down on one lump sum of property. It was a grab here and then record that plat, and then a grab here and then record that plat. And now these properties have come available for development. And so they start over every time you go to record a plat with A, B, C, D, E, F, G, and 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 for the lots. So the county surveyor will not allow that to happen. So I just want to make sure we're not opposed to that. I want to make sure you understand that. It's the county surveyor that will push back if we bring that plat forward and start showing that different lettering. He will be confused on why we did that and ask us to change it back. So I hope that helps to answer that question. I understand your concern, but again, because all this land wasn't taken down in one swoop, we are left with what we have.
Yep, that's fine. I withdraw the comment. It would have probably just made it easier to understand, which is not the stated purpose of that government agency. Yeah. So
sure.
All right.
And so then, to try and address that, that's why the CC&Rs have kind of been prepared the way they have, which is starting with Denali and then doing the addendums to say, now here comes Denali Meadows, and now here comes Denali Summit, and then here are your open spaces and your other common areas and your other things that are associated with these projects that are going to be required for you to maintain and have public access over and so forth. So I know those CCNRs are a little long, but that's really the best we had available to us given how the land was acquired and just, recording laws and whatnot with the county surveyor. So in terms of, the rest of your comments, I'm well aware of them. I've spoken with staff today. I understand you've all chatted with staff. I understand this was going to be the conversation of the evening, the CCNRs. So we understand. We understand what you're looking for. Usually these are red line comments that we would get kind of in an administrative process with other jurisdictions through a final plat review. Where they just, provide us these comments in a red line fashion, and we go back and update and then submit back to staff. And they're like, okay, this looks great. You got everything right now. Let's go forward and go to the county and get them to review the plat and then bring the Mylars back for signature, and everything gets recorded in one fell swoop. And then we bring over that recorded information to the city so they can see that it has been recorded and everything is satisfied. In terms of your concerns with the conditions of approval and the CCNRs, we've talked with staff about this a little bit today, and the idea is to make a reference in the CCNRs to the land use decision and the conditions of approval that are associated with that land use decision, and record the decision, the council's decision, with that CCNRs as an Exhibit A. So instead of just putting the conditions in there, they'll have the whole decision to go through that's recorded with the CCNRs. And that seems to, I think, get to your concerns that you have maybe down the road when some of the staff is no longer there and people might want to do some things that they've continued to comply with the approval as approved. So I really don't have a whole lot more. I'm just really here to answer any questions that you might have, and we do appreciate your time, and I think I'm still getting used to this final development plan process. It's a little bit different than other jurisdictions, so I think in the past we've done it in 30 minutes. Now it's taking a little bit longer, which is great. I think we're getting into a little bit more detail, but really what I'm here to do tonight is answer any questions you have and help us understand what we need to do to complete the process.
Thank you. I appreciate you taking the time. We have a lot of new commissioners, and myself having gone through it. I think years past we used to do it the way you're used to seeing in other jurisdictions, where they were a separate process, that the final plat was a type 1, and this time it came in with the type 4. So we're all learning at the same time. On that note, can you just in a minute tell us, there was a question from one of the commissioners about the HOA process and when the developers turn it over to or if there's a plan for the developer to turn it over, are they going to keep it, and how that works, and if they expire?
Yeah, sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you there. No. Yeah, absolutely. So what happens is when you're in the infancy like we are now, the developer owns all the lots and all the land, and they kind of pay the dues, if you will, into getting the maintenance budget put together for these open common areas that need to be maintained. And they will do that up until there's 80% ownership of the lots within the subdivision. And then at that point, they turn it over to the owners of that subdivision, and they begin to monitor themselves, if you will. They take ownership of the project now, and they hold their own meetings, and they elect their chairs and their members, and they collect the dues, and it really becomes their baby at that point once 80% ownership is attained in the project.
May I ask a question? You have those
Yes.
two private streets in your PUD. Are those maintained by the city after you turn it over, or is that part of the HOA that's maintained those individual strips of road?
Anything that's private will be maintained by the HOA and common.
Okay. I was just curious. So if there's any improvements while you're still building, if it takes 2 or 3 years, you guys have to handle it until you get to 80% ownership, at which point the HOA itself takes over.
Yes. The only area that will not be maintained by the HOA is the stormwater facility. That will ultimately become the city's responsibility.
Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
And that means that that the HOA will be subject to the CCNRs then at that point, and they'll have to maintain them in accordance. They can't do anything outside of what the CCNRs allow at that point then. Is that correct?
I'm not sure if I understood your question.
the homeowners association then manages the CCNRs, and by a vote of the homeowners association, they can modify the CCNRs.
Oh, got it. Okay. Okay.
Through vote, absolutely. You're correct.
Through a vote of the board, but that was my point for referencing the land use decision, was so that when the homeowners association is making decisions and revising the CCNRs to meet their current needs, that they understand that if they have sweeping changes to be made in the open spaces, that there's a land use decision that would have to be honored.
What does that mean? Does that mean that they have to come back to the planning commission to make a change outside of that, or do they just have to consider it?
So if they decided to tract A, they decided that they wanted to go ahead and not keep it as an open space, that they wanted to go ahead and put an extra house on there, they can't do that because there's a land use decision in place that prevents that from happening. And homeowners associations are like us. They're a bunch of volunteers that don't know a lot about land use decisions. And I think if we can give them a hand up and saying, here's another piece of paper that your group has to look at when you make a big decision, that will help them in the future.
That makes sense. And do the CCNRs expire then that they have, or no?
No.
Perpetuity? Yeah.
Perpetuity.
Until they make a change. Got it.
Right.
Okay. Okay. Thank you. Sorry, my question was very clear. I appreciate the comment.
I just don't think I was close enough to the speaker to hear you. So
no worries. Thanks.
That's perfect. And again, thank you for taking the time to answer our questions. I don't see anybody else with the hand raised. Commissioner Brown has recused herself, and Commissioner Kai, are you on Zoom or on phone?
I'm on Teams.
Okay, or whatever electronic device we have. I just want to make sure. Sometimes people can't raise their hand. I just want to make sure that anybody who has any extra questions before I close the public part of the hearing. All right, I do not see any other hands raised, and I'm just going to give a shout out to Eric. He answered a lot of my questions and helped me understand the process. It was there's a lot to absorb, and we've had a lot of papers thrown at us. So, and the process is a little different this time than I was. Just anyway, thank you very much for your time and answering my questions and helping us get through this.
Yeah, I would just like to say the same. We appreciate all the staff's help in getting us to this point today. You know, as you know, these things take quite a bit of time to get all the way back to you. So appreciate everybody's efforts and working with us to get to this point. I think you have a wonderful project, and we're really excited to get started out there.
Excellent. So before we close, I just want to make sure that the applicant is, as we move forward, you're comfortable with the discussions and the comments that we made regarding the CCNRs and the, like you said, the red line edits that'll be coming back and forth between yourself and staff as they wrap up their type 1 task list, correct?
Yeah, based on what I've heard tonight and what I saw in the emails today from staff and our correspondence, there's just a minor change we have to make to the final plat. The easement, we didn't get quite wide enough on that tract A, I believe it was. And so just a minor tweak there, and then the CCNRs are a simple fix. So
okay.
Not really too burdensome.
Excellent. I wanted to make sure if you had any other concerns that they got on the record before I close the public part of this.
Thank you. Appreciate that opportunity.
All right. Going down my list, we did not receive any public testimony prior to the hearing, so there's no further testimony and no rebuttal from the applicant. Are there any final comments by staff before I close the record? Or close
no final comments. Yeah, no final comments. Just to give I guess a reciprocal comment about, thank you guys for reviewing all of this. There's a lot of detail in there. It's not straightforward, and so I appreciate your guys' time in reviewing this as well.
All right. So, are there any other questions of staff before we close the public hearing? Hearing none, the public hearing is closed, and we'll now have discussion and a motion from the commission. All right. I guess my comment and just to wrap it up is to say that this was a little confusing because part of it is a type 4 where we have to make a decision and we have to confirm that they have complied with what the city council has returned to us. And the other part of it is the final plat, which is normally not something we see, and it's something that the staff has to complete through their type 1 process. And I think the presentation that Eric provided this evening and the applicant's reassurance gives me confidence that we have a good process in place, and that what's on the record regarding the CC&Rs and the edits that need to be made would allow us to have the end result that we're looking for. And I would ask if anybody else has any other comments or if we are ready for a motion. Commissioner Widola.
Quick question. I don't know if it's appropriate. So if it's inappropriate to ask as our city council liaison anything at this point?
I do not believe we can take any more testimony.
All right.
Erica can answer that, or Eric, sorry.
So I wouldn't ask anything of the counselor liaison during the public hearing, just because if this were to be appealed, it would go to council for their review.
Fair enough. Thank you.
But I think a couple of us did watch the hearing, so we may be able to provide.
Well, I watched the hearings too.
Okay, good. All right.
So, Chair Simpson, there's no further modifications or changes put in place by the Planning Commission tonight, correct?
Just a moment.
Commissioner Kai, I know that there's a couple of changes that have been identified that the builder has already said, hey, we've got to do these small tweaks, but I don't think there's additional ones from the commission.
And those, so maybe my question would be then to Eric. I know that there was some that were presented in the presentation, but there wasn't anything new that arose out of tonight's meeting, correct?
No, not that I saw. So the motion would be So I think that the changes that are required were captured in the staff presentation and on that slide. I don't think there was anything else that we didn't catch. So the changes that are needed that staff will follow up on are captured as part of the record. And so I think if Chair Simpson agrees, or I guess if you guys agree, that the motion would be to approve it per the staff report without any changes.
Okay, and yeah, thank you for that. That's what I was wanting to just clarify. So I move the Sherwood Planning Commission approve the application for Denali Summit 41 lot planned unit development and subdivision. Public hearing case file LU 2020-013 PUD. Based on the applicant testimony, public testimony received, and the analysis, findings, and conditions in the staff report.
Is there a second?
I'll second.
I didn't see who that was, but.
That's Commissioner Widola.
Oh, there you are. Okay. Sorry about that. Okay, it's been moved and seconded that we approve LU 2020-013 PUD Denali Summit 41 lot planned unit development, final plat, and development plan. Any further discussion? Then I'm going to take a roll call vote. Chair Simpson, yes. Vice Chair Kai.
Yes.
Commissioner Widola.
Yes.
Commissioner Bance,
Yes.
Commissioner Giles,
Yes.
Commissioner Harsh.
Yes.
All right, the motion has passed. And thank you very much to the applicant and to the staff. Again,
Yes.
appreciate
Thanks,
that.
everybody. We appreciate your time. Have a wonderful evening tonight.
All right, you too. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Does this mean they get to get building?
Yes.
Yeah.
All
Probably.
right. Go dig it up.
Ready to get going. Yes, we're ready to go. Thank you.
All right.
All right. So,
Thank
do we have, and it says adjourn work session. We don't have a work session, I don't believe. We're going to have planning commissioner announcements and then adjourn. So does anybody have any announcements before we adjourn? All right. I don't see anybody jumping up for that. So our next meeting is a work session on the 25th at 6:30. Thursday night, we have the Sherwood West relook if anybody wants to watch it. And that's what I know. All right. Yes.
Question. What do you want us to do with these things? These big, sorry, it's all blurred out, but the big binders that you sent for it, you left for us in the bags. You want us to get those back to you somehow?
Oh,
You're on
Erica, you're on mute.
Oh, nope, you're
Still on
still on.
mute.
Nope,
Uh-oh.
still on mute.
It's not mute.
Sheldon,
Does your microphone?
like the other ones?
I was gonna say, you can either get a nice shelf like this that stores all of them, or they do want the blue bags back eventually. So you can, and they do recycle the binders and the paper, I assume.
So I guess Eric might be able to help Erica out. Eric,
So,
is
can you hear me now?
Yes.
Oh,
There
yes.
we go.
There she is.
we go.
Great. I just took off my headset. I think that was the problem. We'll coordinate with Colleen to pick up those blue bags, and you can just put the binders back in the bag. We'll pick them up, recycle everything. And, we try to give the binders back to the applicants as well.
Okay.
Is the city hall open at all? So if we were to somehow make our way down there during the day?
Yes, so City Hall is open. You can go through the front doors. We have some blue bins right in the front entryway. One says planning. So you can either just set the blue bag on top of that bin or just right underneath the table.
Okay. Yeah, I think I have more than one blue bag that needs to be returned.
We check those bins a couple times throughout the day. So
While we're there, can we wave at you through like 4 layers of plexiglass?
and a couple of entryways as well. Yeah.
All right.
Hey, about the new look at the Sherwood West on Thursday night, is that, I assume we're getting multiple looks at it, or is that the best place to start getting input and seeing what's going on there?
So the meeting on Thursday night is probably the best way to start getting involved or learning more about that process.
Okay.
The packet is up online. All the information will be posted online for folks to review. And then if you want to submit comments, about any of the packet material or just comments in general about the project, just like Planning Commission, we are asking for those comments to be received 24 hours in advance of the meeting, and they will be read into the community comment portion of the meeting itself.
So this is the opening meeting for it. So it'll be kind of the introduction to the project.
Yes.
And then is there 6 or 12 meetings?
We have, right now we have 7 proposed meetings throughout the next 12 to 14 months.
I was remembering 12 months in there. 12 of something, 12 meetings or 12 months, something like that. So,
yep.
Okay. Excellent. Commissioner Widola?
Yeah, just a quick question for, I don't know, maybe you and for staff, but our plan for resuming face-to-face meetings and inside the city building.
Oh, thank God.
That's an excellent question, and I don't have a firm answer to give the commission at this moment in time, but we are hoping as we progress throughout the summer, we can start resuming those meetings hopefully late summer, early fall.
Thank you.
So one question, comment, and is it because the state is not allowing it, or that there isn't provisions in the council meeting area to be able to keep the 6-foot distancing? Because I don't know where I was, but they had plexiglass built up perfectly so that the people sitting in between each slot were, were separated. I mean, it seems like we ought to be able to.
Yeah.
There you go. It seems like we ought to be able to come up with.
Everyone gets their own bubble gene.
Okay. Well, it's kind of funny that it's kind of serious. It would be nice to start engaging in public, and if we can get plexiglass in between each person and everybody file in one at a time, and then we all sit down and we don't have to pass each other, we could have a meeting in person, and even our open houses could start actually having people come up to testify. So,
but are precautions like that even necessary with vaccinations fully available? And if we all have our vaccinations, I'm just curious if that's going to be necessary procedure.
So I'll chime in, and Erica was right. I mean, we're not ready yet. I think it is probably going to be in the nearer future, especially as more and more people get vaccinated and the state starts coming out of the risk levels. I think as of now, we're still not quite there. We tried to pull the budget committee to see if they would be comfortable having budget committee meetings in person over at the Arts Center, so we could really make sure that we're keeping distance. And from what I understand, it was kind of 50-50. And if we're not going to, it's really hard to do a hybrid meeting where some people are in person and some people are remote. And so until we're really able to do it in person consistently, where everybody is comfortable doing it in person, and the public, I mean, that's the other piece, is that we need to make sure that we're setting it up so the public can come and or participate if they can't. We're still not there yet, and frankly, we'll be taking our cues from council as well. And I know Councilor Scott, I'm just looking, you're still on. I don't know if council, I know you guys are kind of chomping at the bit as well to get to in person as well. Do you want to speak to that at all?
The last time we spoke about it on council, I think it was still a little bit of a mixed bag. I think we're probably, like you said, I think midsummer is probably the target at this point. I mean, I'm vaccinated. I think, most of us are either got 1 dose or 2 doses now. So, but I think the public component is the piece too, right? How many people do you want to allow in a room? You don't know, you're not going to be taking temperatures at the door and checking vaccine cards. So that's not, you got to deal with that. How are you going to handle the public? And, I think it's challenging for us to have council meetings at the Arts Center because we, all the camera equipment and everything is all set up in the City Hall meeting room. And I think we also don't want to go to a place where it's like, oh, we're back in person. Oh, now we're online again. Or we're back. We want to, when we go back, we want to go back and be back and not have this, no one knows where the meeting's going to be week to week.
Where does the school board meet? They've been in person for quite some time.
As a member of the Bond Oversight Committee, I know that we've just provided them a very nice room at the old Hopkins School, and so they have plenty of room to do it.
Yeah, they have a very large meeting space there, is my understanding.
And they don't generally have the type of public that we get at our council meetings and planning commission meetings, especially. And they still are live streamed.
All right.
Thanks.
Well, there's the answer.
And I will just, I think Erica and I and Councilor Scott and others, we know that is the desire of the Planning Commission. And I think, hearing you guys, all be speaking about that is certainly helpful for us to know where you guys stand. And as we are able to make decisions, knowing that is really helpful. So we'll ask us every meeting, and maybe eventually we'll have a different update for you.
Yeah,
from my perspective, I think it helps give me a cleaner delineation from the end of my workday to this. That's why I've moved downstairs now the weather's gotten better, because, you know, I don't know about the rest of you all, but oftentimes we're still in our office space working. We come onto these, and it just makes it a much longer day without a break in the middle almost, right? So it would be much more engaging and easier to feel engaged. I think if I went to a discrete location to do that, for me personally, it's definitely been a challenge.
Agreed. I think it's easier to see, you know, when we're, you know, I've been lost in meetings and trying to dig through paperwork. And if I've got someone next to me to help point me in the right direction, it's certainly helpful when we've got so much paperwork and so much stuff that we're trying to learn and be thrown at us over the next few months. It's gonna be a lot of work and a lot of reading and a lot of shuffling through the dining room table, getting stuff ready. So anyway, any other comments or questions? All right. Well, then, thank you, everybody, for a lovely evening and a good hearing and a lot of learning. So look forward to seeing you in a couple weeks.
Everybody, thanks. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Have a good night. Thank you.